For thousands of years, the rhythm of the Indian Ocean was dictated by one of nature's most incredible phenomena, the monsoon winds. Imagine this. For 6 months, the winds blow reliably from the southwest, pushing ships from the coast of Africa towards Arabia, Persia, and India. Then, like clockwork, they reverse, blowing from the northeast for the next 6 months, bringing those same ships, now laden with exotic goods, back home. This predictable, powerful force wasn't just weather, it was the engine of a global economy, the heartbeat of a civilization, and it gave birth to one of history's most fascinating and often overlooked stories, the story of the Swahili coast. Most people think of African history in terms of ancient Egypt or vast inland empires, but along the sun-drenched eastern coastline from modern-day Somalia down to Mozambique, a unique and powerful culture was flourishing. This wasn't a single unified empire but a string of independent city-states, each ruled by its own sultan. These were the Swahili people, a vibrant fusion of African Bantu roots interwoven with centuries of influence from Arab, Persian, and Indian traders who followed the monsoon winds. The very name Swahili comes from the Arabic word Sawahil, meaning coasts, and their language, Kiswahili, is a beautiful testament to this blend, a Bantu language enriched with a vast Arabic vocabulary. Forget the stereotypes of a primitive, isolated Africa. The Swahili coast was a cosmopolitan hub of global trade. From the African interior came the treasures that the world craved: gold from the mines of Zimbabwe, precious ivory, exotic animal skins, and tragically enslaved people. In return, the Swahili merchants imported fine silks from China, intricate porcelain, colorful Indian cottons, gleaming Persian silverware, and fragrant spices. This wasn't simple barter. It was a sophisticated network. The sultans grew incredibly wealthy by controlling this trade, imposing taxes, and managing the bustling ports that dotted the coastline. Let's talk about cities like Kilwa. When the great Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta visited in the 14th century, he called it one of the most beautiful and well-constructed towns he had ever seen. Picture this: grand mosques built from coral stone, sprawling palaces with sunken courtyards, and ornate carvings, and multi-story stone houses that stood in stark contrast to the mud and thatch common elsewhere. The Sultan of Kilwa was so wealthy he was said to dress in silk and his court dripped with gold. He controlled the gold trade from Sofala, making Kilwa the most powerful and prosperous city on the coast. Another legendary name is Zanzibar, the Spice Island, which would later become a major center for cloves and other valuable spices. These cities were not just rich. They were centers of learning, art, and Islamic scholarship. For nearly 500 years, this golden age of the Swahili sultans continued, powered by the monsoon winds and their strategic position in the Indian Ocean. But in 1498, everything changed. A new type of ship appeared on the horizon, ships that didn't rely on the monsoons. They were Portuguese caravels, led by the explorer Vasco da Gama, armed with a weapon the Swahili had never faced: ship-mounted cannons. The Portuguese weren't interested in fair trade. They wanted to seize control. They saw the wealth of the Swahili cities and sought to dominate the Indian Ocean trade routes for themselves. What followed was a century of brutal conflict. The Portuguese, with their superior firepower, systematically attacked and plundered the Swahili city-states. They burned down mosques, sacked palaces, and built imposing fortresses like Fort Jesus in Mombasa to enforce their rule. The delicate balance of trade was shattered, the once thriving cities began to decline, their wealth siphoned off to Lisbon. The Golden Age was over, replaced by a period of foreign domination and economic ruin. The Swahili spirit, however, was not broken. They resisted, launching rebellions and seeking allies to help them expel the invaders. Their plea for help was answered from an old trading partner, the Omanis, from their powerful base in the Arabian Peninsula. The Omani Arabs saw the Portuguese as both religious rivals and economic competitors. In the late 17th century, the Omanis launched a major campaign to drive the Portuguese out of East Africa. The pivotal moment came with the epic 2-year siege of Fort Jesus in Mombasa. After a long and bloody struggle, the Omanis captured the fort in 1698, effectively ending Portuguese dominance over most of the Swahili coast. This ushered in a new era, often called the Omani Restoration. The Sultans of Oman moved their capital from Muscat all the way to Zanzibar, recognizing its strategic importance. Under their rule, the Swahili coast experienced a commercial revival. Zanzibar, in particular, boomed, becoming the world's leading producer of cloves. The old trade networks were re-established, and the cities once again buzzed with activity. However, this prosperity had a dark side. The Omani period also saw a massive and horrific expansion of the East African slave trade to supply labor for clove plantations and markets in the Middle East. It was a time of renewed wealth but built on immense human suffering. The final chapter for the Swahili Sultans was written by the arrival of a new, more powerful set of European powers in the late 19th century. During the scramble for Africa, Britain and Germany carved up East Africa between them. They established protectorates and colonies, stripping the sultans of their real power. The Sultan of Zanzibar was allowed to keep his title, but he was essentially a puppet ruler under British control. The long, proud history of independent Swahili rule, which had weathered monsoons, merchants, and empires for over 1,000 years, finally came to an end under the weight of European colonialism. Today, the legacy of the Swahili Sultans is all around you if you visit the East African coast. You can wander through the winding alleys of Zanzibar's stone town, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You can explore the magnificent ruins of Kilwa or the imposing walls of Fort Jesus. You can hear the melodic sounds of Kiswahili, now a national language for several countries. It's a story of incredible wealth and cultural fusion, of resilience in the face of brutal invasion, and a powerful reminder that African history is rich, complex, and truly global. The winds of the Indian Ocean no longer carry the same dows, but they still whisper the forgotten stories of the Swahili Sultans. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through history. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more forgotten histories. Let me know in the comments which part of the Swahili story surprised you the most. Until next time, stay curious.